the biggest challenge was being able to plan and properly forecast how much material we were going to need, and trying to secure our very specific materials for our productions. And I think discipline too, like, God, we had so much demand for our products internationally and in the US. But we really held off on doing that until recently, because we were growing at such a fast clip that if we would have been aggressive or impatient, I think we would have left ourselves really short when it came to our products and our customers in Canada, because we would have been just stretching ourselves, our raw material resources and access way too thin.
Hi, I'm Mike Pincus, co-founder of Connect CPA and your host at GrowthTales. Today's guest is Maxim Marion, the founder of AquaOmega, a line of incredibly high-quality omega-3 supplements. Max and I have known each other for many years, and I'm still amazed to this day that despite being a founder, an entrepreneur, and a business operator, Max has an MD or almost PhD-like knowledge of how to embark on optimal health. As a busy founder myself, I intimately understand the impacts of a hectic schedule and high-stress environment impacting our ability to have self-care. It was through a conversation with Max that he recommended taking omega-3 supplements every day and sent a bottle of omega-3 high EPA fish oil right to my house. In all honesty, I didn't know if I was doing anything with it over the first couple months, but then I went for an annual checkup and my blood lipids had improved drastically from my prior checkup. It was at that moment that I probably drove Max crazy requesting advice on all things health. But this is a business podcast, and Max has scaled an incredible company. In this episode, we discussed how Max scaled AquaOmega to great heights by focusing on quality, partnerships, and constant research. We also discussed omega-3s and health, as Max is both passionate about his industry and the steps needed to have optimal health day to day. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, Max, thank you so much for joining me today on GrowthTales.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Max, we've known each other a long time, and I've always loved what Vivo Brand does, especially because I'm getting older and supplements are something that I've realized are very important in my life. The biggest one that I've added to the arsenal is omega-3s, and that's a world you introduced me to. But before we dive into health and supplements and how they help us out, how did you start Vivo Brands, and how did a business person like yourself get into the supplement space?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you said that, because that's where most people kind of start really getting interested in supplements and improving their health, is when you start to get a little bit older, you get a family, priorities change. And for me, it was kind of life after sports, and still wanting to stay active and exercise, but obviously not recovering as well as I used to when I was, much younger. And the interest in sports nutrition, came to be, and looking for things in market that could help improve my recovery, improve my performance, educating myself, in reaching out to, different people to understand it better. I found that, most of the products that were out there had a lot of fillers in them, artificial colors and sweeteners, sugars, things that could actually hinder performance and recovery. And, and that's where our initial idea for sports nutrition was born, which was build a line of sports nutrition products that were made entirely from whole food ingredients. And so that was kind of our entrance into the supplement world. And then from there, when we were out in market educating athletes and consumers about the importance of avoiding these fillers and these artificial ingredients, sweeteners, sugars, was where the demand for omega-3s came from. There was a lot of new literature coming out around omega-3s, helping to improve physical capacity, performance, obviously recovery, and just overall health. This request kept coming up so often that it kind of forced us to look into this space in general. And at first, like anybody else, when you look at the omega-3 space, go into any, supplement store or big box retail, it almost seems completely saturated. There's tons of products sitting on the shelf. So at first it's like, man, someone's got to be doing this right. But the more we looked into it, the more we found there was an opportunity to really reinvent the space and to set a new standard for what we learned was probably the most important supplement and that anybody could take to really improve their overall health.
It's I agree with everything you just said, and I you made me jump into the rabbit hole of when I first learned about Aqua Omega and the fact you had the highest EPA that was on the shelf, and I didn't know what was on the shelf. And I actually went into Healthy Planet, saw your product on the shelf, started looking against other competitors, and where my mind goes, like thinking from an entrepreneurial standpoint, is you have all these safety standards and regulations and organizations that oversee the products, like I guess certifications that you have on the product. When
Mhm.
you were going from 0 to 1 million, just getting started, how did you figure out all of these things? Because it seems like to me overwhelming on how you would now go compete against really, really big
Some
players in the space, and
giants.
you'd have to meet these standards, right?
Yeah, it was a really interesting kind of journey getting into this space because like I said when we started looking into it. So when we were initially kind of approached for saying like, hey, you guys need to add an omega-3 to your line and it would be great for you or you're going to sell so much product. We could have just turned to a contract manufacturer and said, hey, what do you got? Can we slap our label on it and kind of be done with it? Our approach was really fundamentally different where we said, okay, like let's look at the literature, let's look at the most recent studies, let's really educate ourselves on this category, and let's surround ourselves by industry experts that know this space significantly better than us. And when we started to do that, it just really started to reinforce what we were already thinking, where it was like, you know, Europe was very progressive when it came to omega 3s, where they were showing a lot of studies showing, the most amount of efficacy with like 2.5 grams, 5 grams of omega 3s. We couldn't find anything like that on any of the shelves here in North America. So we we started to formulate and understand from a practitioner level how these products were being used in practice and their frustrations that they had. So like you said, like, the products that generally were on shelf, 500,000 milligrams combined EPA, DHA, where they were having to talk to their patients and convince them to take 3 and 5 servings of these, which led to poor patient compliance and poor results and eventually distrust in the supplement, which was one of the big objections we had when we got back into this when we got into this space was re-educating the consumer on omega-3s and how they should be taking these omega-3s. um, so we gather all these resources and these experts, and we started to formulate our inaugural product, which was our high EPA product, the product you were just talking about earlier. And I'm really proud of how we build all of our products. And I tell this to everybody because we build top down and not bottom up. And what I mean by that is normally when companies will build products like this, they'll say, all right, like what's our target retail price point? What can we afford to pay for it? And then what can we get for that? Whereas we made like no compromises in the initial stages, even today. But it
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, we want the absolute highest potency of EPA while maintaining a triglyceride form. Triglyceride is the omega-3 when it's in its most natural state and in its most bioavailable and most stable state, which is extremely important when you're taking omega-3 products. We wanted a small fish. So very important when you're getting your omega-3s that you should be getting from small fish because these environmental contaminants, PCBs, dioxins, and heavy metals, things that are not, your body's not able to break down or process, tend to store in fatty tissues, the same way they do in fish. So when you harvest from a smaller fish that's doesn't have as long of a lifespan as, let's say, salmon or tuna, you end up with much lower level base levels of these environmental contaminants. Again, triglyceride was the like a non-negotiation point for us, and we were trying to hit those therapeutic doses, and at this point we were looking for like 5 grams. And I guess one of our biggest issues when we were getting started was in the formulation, because then when we turned to go have these products made by the various contract manufacturers or even raw material suppliers, anybody that could help us make the products, we kept running into costing issues. right?
Hmm.
Huge minimums, like costs were if you look at the omega-3 space, even today, even after all the, raw material constraints and pressures and price increases that we've seen over a few years, there's still this giant disparity between like your commodity level products, I guess we would consider, and your professional grade products. And what
Hmm.
we had realized is like consumers are willing to spend up to a certain price point for good quality, but we're pretty hesitant to go back that. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to build the highest quality omega-3 and to make it affordable for the end consumer. So when we
Hmm.
went out to start pricing the product initially, without telling anybody what our target price point was, um, they were almost quoting that retail price point for our large production runs. Um, so that's when John and I, our formulator, we decided that the only way that we were going to be able to get around that was to go direct to the source and source all the materials ourselves. And that's what we ended up doing. We actually booked a trip to South America because we had selected anchovy as the best possible source for our omega-3s. We booked appointments with every crude oil facility, every distillation plant that we possibly could. And I mean, to this day, I still say that's the absolute best thing we ever did before getting into the omega-3 space, because we really got to look at the underside of the business in the industry and find a fantastic partner, partnering with the fishery, the crude oil facility, the distillation plant. And because we did all these things direct to source, we're able to bring a much better product to market at a much more affordable price point. Even to the point when we launched, people were like, how are you doing this? Or why are you doing this? It's so much better than everything else that's out there. And it was like, look, we understand now that this is fundamentally the most important thing that anybody could take. And we want to create as much accessibility to this important supplement that we possibly can.
Wow, that is quite the process to get to get up and
Yeah, and then
running.
that's not including all the licensing and the approvals and the claims that you're trying to get on your products. Yeah, so
So
I
like
think
the I
sourcing was difficult for sure.
on the back of the bottle, what's the organization? IFOS, or is that correct?
IFOS, International
I-
Fish Oil Standards. Yeah.
So ignoring the fact that you obviously had to get these certifications in order to get on the shelves of major retailers, I think the proof though that people care about, like I didn't understand this as I'm getting older. I remember the first time we spoke and you're like, "Hey Mike, cardiovascular health, triglycerides and LDL, you got to get on fish oil." And I'm
Hmm.
like, "Oh, like this is the thing you don't think about in your 20s and you go through your 30s and you're like, "Okay, I'm not still thinking about this." And then somewhere in like late 30s going to 40s, like at least for me, it's like you're looking at your blood work. You're like, does that look perfect? And I started taking um, I think the high EPA version of
Hmm.
the AquaOmega. And I told you, we jumped on a call and I'm like, my triglycerides fell off the table. And I couldn't
Yeah, we
believe
had
it.
seen that. We see that all the time. People will send us messages, email, and say like, "I can't believe the impact that this had on my blood work. It's unbelievable." I get excited about that. I think it's amazing.
And it's just unbelievable. So I wanted to ask you, do you think if you look at the health space, like YouTube's obviously blowing up with health influencers, doctors, people that are sharing content that are specialists about optimizing health. And you hear about like two things pop up every single time, at least for me, what I've heard. Magnesium pops up all the time, and omega 3s pops up literally every single time. Do you think timing has played a major factor in you guys becoming a multi-million dollar company and scaling out the brand? That you were in the right place at the right time.
Um, Maybe, maybe. I think our mission really resonated with people. We wanted to really set. It was important for us to set a new standard in this very well established category. If you look at the omega-3 category globally, it's absolutely massive. I think it often gets overlooked. Like when you're talking about like, oh, I had never thought about omega-3s before. I think traditionally people are drawn to like the magic bullet where it's like, oh, what's going to make me better right away? And omega-3s are almost too simple, right? It's like, get the essential fatty acids that you need. Oftentimes, EPA to help correct the imbalance of omega-6 to omega-3s and really reduce inflammation. And when you do that, you start improving all areas of health. But what was a catalyst in helping us scale? I think a testament to the quality of our products, our educational platforms, and I think we were able to, because we were developing these great products and we were working with some really great organizations like the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine and the Boucher Institute of Naturopathic Medicine, and they appreciated what we're doing. And because they were seeing such great results with their patients in practice, it the word of mouth just kind of naturally started to spread, and people gravitated towards our product and towards our mission. I think we stayed really true to everything we set out to do in the initial stages, and I really believe that was the catalyst. Going out, educating, sampling, talking to end consumers, talking to naturopathic doctors, getting our products into their hands. I mean, the omega-3 category, like, even with all these health podcasts and influencers that are talking about magnesium, omega-3s, the category continues to grow. I mean, we continue to grow, but I think we just continue to grow because of the quality of our products, and because we have been dead set on setting a new standard in this super super important category.
Hmm. And Max, we talked about some of the obviously the good and the fact that people are adopting the brand. What are some of the challenges? You're in a super competitive space. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. What are some of the things that you've had as challenges as you've continued to grow? And I know you have so many that you probably couldn't list all of them, but what are some of the major challenges you've had as you've grown Vivo Brands?
Um, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is like the past 2.5 years. We so the kind of fishing seasons tend to be very cyclical, where normally you
Hmm.
would get like one neutral kind of season, then you would get one El Nino season, then you would get two El Nino seasons, where the currents are colder, the fishing is exceptional. Because the water's colder, the anchovies tend to put on more fat and have a higher fat yield. Recently, like over the last 2.5 years, there's been a significant amount of raw material constraints. Like even last year, they canceled the fishing season down in Chile and Peru.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, that's just a testament. Like, we were able to kind of see that and plan, again, working with some great organizations. Like John is on the board of directors for the global organization of EPA DHA. Works really closely, with the fisheries, the distillation plants, to get a good understanding of it. I think that the biggest challenge was being able to plan and properly forecast how much material we were going to need, and trying to secure our very specific materials for our productions. And I think discipline too. Like, God, we had so much demand for our products internationally and in the US. But we really held off on doing that until recently, because we were growing at such a fast clip that if we would have been aggressive or impatient, I think we would have left ourselves really short when it came to our products and our customers in Canada, because we would have been just stretching ourselves, our raw material resources and access way too thin. I don't know
Would
if
you
you
have been
you
able to
understand what I
keep up
mean.
with supply if that happened?
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, we wouldn't have been able to keep up with the supply and demand. Like, we were double digit growth since we launched the brand every single year. And sometimes, even like when we think we're producing 4 or 5 months of inventory here, sometimes it's gone in two, right? And it's not like we're out of inventory today, we can get inventory tomorrow. Like, it's like a 12, 14 week kind of planning process to be able to produce products and get them out. So I think, I think that was like, some of the biggest challenges we saw: raw material supply, having patience, waiting to develop these new markets, even though you see the opportunity, it's there, it's right in front of you, but having to be able to say no to that, um, to be able to continue to properly support where you're already winning. I think, for me anyway, that was kind of, I like to develop those things. I like bringing our products. I like seeing the success, but having the discipline to say, yeah, that's not the right time for us, because, here's the materials we have access to right now. And that's just going to support the growth that we're dealing with right now in Canada, that was pretty challenging.
And do you think going forward, it remains one of the biggest challenges for you, Max, that being able to match supply to the demand, meaning like you said, the lag times for production, all those things, the forecasting, does that remain a pain point that can't fully ever be eliminated? Like you always have to be on top of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, like we live in our burn rates, right? Where we're kind of
Hmm.
trying to pull out the perfect crystal ball to determine how much material you need, because it's okay to go long, but you don't want to go too long. And then allocation of those raw materials, where are you putting those? We've got some great relationships with some fantastic retail partners, great relationships with doctors, but I think that'll be the challenge to any kind of scaling business, especially for the fact that we're entirely self-funded. So we've
Hmm.
never gone out to look for any funding to grow or build the business at all.
So that brings me to my next question is, you mentioned international demand, all these other places of demand. What are your plans over the next like 1 to 3 years for Vivo Brands? Where do you want to take the company?
So I mean, my big lofty hairy goal is to be the premium omega 3 brand globally, and to be recognized at that. And we're doing lots of things to do that, lots of research, lots of development. Working with a lot of our university and college partners, to be able to continue to educate. But yeah, I mean that's where I would love to go. I mean, we're looking now at slowly expanding into the United States. We're exploring Asia. I mean, the Asian market when it comes to any natural health or supplement is absolutely booming. I mean, that's growing at such a fast clip that I think anybody who's not looking at that is sleeping. And there's a lot of demand for a quality omega 3 product in those markets. So research development, new product development, kind of staying cutting edge and on top of it, you know, and just keep having fun at doing what we're doing. It has been a lot of fun.
You know what? I always wonder, and I want to ask you this, the education side of it. I I figure like this is a type of business that grows itself when you have what looks like a best of breed product plus like a need. I think a lot of people are uneducated on the cardiovascular help, brain health, all these things that omega 3s do, because it's something that I think when you go to a primary health doctor, they're looking to assess if anything's wrong and look at your basic lipids, and there's like a protocol, right? But when you talk about like if all that is good, that doesn't mean you're optimal. And so like optimal, and I'm learning this because I look into my blood work, optimal sometimes means you have to take certain things to get there. How are you educating potential customers? And like you said, education is a big part of this because people just don't realize how important um, omega 3s are to optimal health.
We work with a lot of practitioners, a lot of naturopathic doctors, dietitians, um, primary. So they're already being educated on how omega 3s work. But I think what makes us fundamentally different to them is how we source and process. So everything we do is done directly in the fishing grounds. So go out, it's amazing actually. Like after seeing everything, and I could bore you to death and tell you all the ugly side of the omega 3 space.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're going to do. But the way we do it is like we work with a small commercial fishing fleet, which goes out and catches anchovies directly off the shore of where the fish is actually being processed. So within about an hour of the time the fish is being caught, it's being processed into crude fish oil. And then we have a patented cold molecular distillation process. So instead of like boiling the fish and using or the crude fish oil and using industrial solvents to concentrate them at various ratios, we do it cold so we don't damage the EFAs, and we don't use these industrial solvents in the process, which leaves
Mhm.
us with a much better quality oil. So I think a lot of that education with them went a really long way. Now, when it comes to the end consumer, I agree. I think there's a lack of education and understanding in the standard North American diet and how it's highly concentrated in omega 6, which are very inflammatory. And And I think when sometimes when people look at disease, like what you said, I think they assume that disease happens overnight, right? It's like, well, I've got diabetes. I must have just got diabetes, like a cold or something like that.
Hmm.
What people don't realize is that when you get a lot of these chronic health issues or diseases, this is something that breeds in your system over time. It's
Hmm.
not, not there today, there tomorrow. This has been breeding in your system for 10, 15, 20 years.
Hmm.
And almost every single one of these chronic illnesses or diseases are directly linked back to inflammation. And one of the primary roles of omega 3, specifically EPA, is regulating inflammation in the body, correcting the imbalance of the omega 6 to omega 3s. And when you do that, everything starts to work better. Less brain fog, better sleep, better energy, better recovery, better blood sugar, better everything. It's amazing, and it's so simple that I think people overlook it. And so our idea, like when we go out, we educate, we work. It's kind of reeling that in and helping people understand that this is a fundamental. But you can't just be any omega 3. It has to be a good quality omega 3, because if you're taking a bad quality omega 3, which there are a lot that carry very high levels of oxidation, that have not gone through proper independent testing, so they still have very high levels of environmental contaminants and impurities, which will store in your body and promote inflammation. You need to be taking a good quality omega 3 to get the benefits you're looking for. I could show you some stuff like, some of the solvents that are being used in some of these other products. Like when I take them and I put them in a styrofoam cup, it'll melt it. It's unbelievable, you know? And not just that, when they're in that form, they're highly unstable. And like, if you want a visual of what it actually is to consume an oxidized fish oil, it's like if you were consuming a cup of rusted oil. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that's exactly how it would translate. Where your body now would have to use this natural antioxidant to correct that oil so that it doesn't make you sick. It creates a cell danger response in the body, promotes inflammation. You're going the complete opposite way of what you're normally getting. So our education is regaining consumer confidence in the most important supplement that they should be taking in an essential fat, and they call it essential because you need this to live healthy. Your body
Hmm.
cannot generate it on its own. You must obtain through diet or supplementation.
Right. And diet obviously helps as well, like eating salmon, fish, whatever it might be, but you don't
With its
always
limita
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, but with limitations, right? Because of the environmental
Mercury, right?
contaminants. Yeah, so there's like the bodies of water where we're catching, and not a lot of farm fish as well, but the bodies of water that we're harvesting these fish from, they're becoming more and more contaminated. Um, and without going through distillation to remove these, it's not really safe to consume fish than more than once or twice a week. And there's actually a misconception that when people eat fish, they think they're eating omega 3s. The reality is you're eating a good source of light protein that has the benefit of having omega 3s in it, right?
Hmm.
On average, a three ounce cooked portion of fish will have like 200 to 500 milligrams total of omega 3s. Well, compare that to one serving of our high EPA, you're getting almost 5,000 milligrams.
Wow.
It's and that's where you're in your therapeutic dose on a daily basis is starting, roughly at 2,500 milligrams.
I learn something new every time we chat. And I know we're running out of time. I have two last questions. When I went to your website before we jumped on, I saw you have omega 3s for kids. I've got two little
Yeah.
girls. I'm
I'll send you
curious.
some. Love
I
them.
just wanted to ask you the question. Is this something that's becoming it's important in even young kids to have high omega 3 levels?
Fundamentally. Yeah. It's so fundamental for kids for, eye development, brain development. Even there's some amazing studies, even like around behavioral age issues, ADHD. Like a lot of these things will link back again to inflammation. Um, and if you can provide these essential nutrients, I mean, you obviously everybody wants to give their kid the best start. It's just again, you have to be careful on the quality of the products that you're getting. But
Hmm.
yeah, the answer is it's fundamental for everybody,
And
old,
it's gummy
young,
format, so
new.
kids will eat it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah. Okay.
our liquids taste pretty amazing, but our gummies are like they're like a treat, but
Yeah. Yeah.
they're not built like everything else. Again, like when we looked at the space, we looked at what was out there, and you have very low dose, I'm talking kids gummies now, but you have very low dose omega-3s from large fish, a lot of the times like tuna, that carry high levels of natural environmental contaminants, often in the like wrong format of oil, in the form of an ethyl ester based oil. But when you actually break it out versus, the amount of gelatin and sugar and
Hmm.
artificial colors that go into these products, you're net negative.
Hmm.
So we looked at building with our kids gummies was something completely. Actually, I'll tell you a story. Our first rendition of the gummies was a flop, because we focused primarily on the efficacy, and then it
Hmm.
was like, okay, it's got to be super efficacious, no sugar, no gelatin, no artificial colors, no
Hmm.
dyes, and the highest concentrated of polyunsaturated fats that we can possibly have in this gummy. And by the way, it's got to taste good, right? So it had all the great things,
Yeah.
but we missed the mark on the flavor.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a failure because we learned from it. So again, without compromising, we're able to go back to the lab and fix the flavor and the texture profile to make it more palatable to kids.
Right. Like,
We went
so that
through
they could
we
take
went
it
through like
down.
an yeah, we went through like another 100 renditions
Yeah.
of the gummies before we got it perfect. But we learned that, what's that saying? It's like a wise man, a fool never learns from mistakes. A wise man learns from mistakes. And then I forget how it goes, but it's a great saying. It's like, and it's like,
I hear you.
the smartest one learns from everybody else's mistakes. But we learn from our mistakes in this case, and we said, look, like, I'm not going to stand my ground and say, no, this product is perfect the way it is. We listened to our retailers and our consumers and said, okay, there's clearly a flavor profile issue here, and there's a texture issue here, and we went back to the lab. We fixed that. We re-released this like a month ago, and it's you know we'll do 50x what we had done before.
And Max, final question for you. Before I just want to be cognizant of your time and ask you your final question here, which I asked everybody, and that is, you've been in Vivo Brands for a long time. What would you say are some of the biggest lessons you could give to other entrepreneurs, even if it's just one lesson, in terms of growing a business, given all the challenges that?
you, you know what, I was telling somebody this just the other day, actually, and I was saying, I think too many young entrepreneurs want to fake it before they make it, right? They want people to look at you and think that you're bigger than what you are. And there's a lot of power in humility. And I think you'll find that if you turn to some people that have done it before, or some people that have more experience, people are much more willing to help you than what you might think. And
That's
I think that would be my biggest piece of advice to people. And don't fake it till you make it. Like, we like to say, make it till you make it, because it's okay to be in the grind, and it's okay to be in the trenches. And I think people will appreciate that if you work with that kind of humility.
You know what? I think that's amazing advice, and I would echo that, because that's something you see all the time. Like, people that have been in it for long enough that they have felt the war wounds of building a company. You normally can sense at least some element of humility, meaning like they've experienced flying too close to the sun, and
Yeah, you get humbled
and
every once in a while, right? Yeah.
and Max, I want to say that, like, I have huge respect for what you've done with Vivo Brands, and I want to thank you for taking. I know we're a little bit over on time here, but I want to thank you for taking the time to, like, share your story on Vivo Brands. First of all, you've helped my health. First and foremost, taking the time away from this to give me free advice on and I it's a conversation for another day of how you know so much about everything medical and health. Like, I mean, you're at the level of an MD. So I that's a conversation for another day. But I do want to thank you for taking the time and all the time you've injected into helping me out and understanding how to optimize health and how to use supplements in order to get optimal health.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. My wife would echo that. She says I could bore people to death, and it's so anyway.
It's
It was
amazing.
funny because Calvin meets somebody at the golf course the other day. We're passionate about it. I absolutely love it, And just a little anecdote in there. It's like Calvin, who works with us here, he ends up going to meet somebody that I just happened to get paired up with to play golf. And the guy, it's a funny guy because he didn't really believe in supplements or whatever. And he's like, he tells Calvin, he says, "Hey, tell that snake oil salesman my joints have never felt better, you know?" And he's like, "That stuff really works." And Calvin comes back and he's like, "Of course you would. You get paired up with somebody, you probably talk to them about fish oil and supplements the entire round of golf." I love it. I absolutely love it. Our team loves it. Like when people get better and they feel healthier, it just I think that's what really gets me going. Of course, I like the wins in business, but that really gets me excited. So yeah.
Well, you could feel the passion, and you could feel that it's authentic. And like I said, people could go test their lipids after they take the product, like I did, right? So, uh, thanks again, Max, and
Yeah, thanks for having
hopefully
me.
I'll take you up on that conversation to understand the backstory of how your in-depth knowledge is at the level that it's at. I know, obviously, being in this space, you had to know a lot, but you're on another level. So maybe that's
we're
a
we're
conversation
surrounded
for
we're
another.
surrounded by some pretty great people. Honestly, we have a network of naturopathic doctors and dietitians that are just fantastic, and we're just always learning from them.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, thanks again, Max, and
Thank you.
looking forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks.